No one could have predicted that Hollywood's brightest teen queen would one day become its most notorious tabloid tragedy. Lindsay Lohan was once the darling of America, the girl whose freckled smile lit up The Parent Trap and whose performance in Mean Girls crowned her the voice of a generation. But behind the red carpets and flashing cameras, a darker story was unfolding. Fame had not saved her, it was quietly destroying her. Her name became less associated with hit movies and more with mugshots, court appearances, and failed attempts at redemption. What started as youthful rebellion spiraled into addiction, reckless behavior, and a complete collapse of a career that had promised so much. The world watched as the golden girl of Hollywood transformed into a cautionary tale, consumed by the same industry that had built her up. This is the shocking, untold story of Lindsay Lohan's fall from grace.
At the turn of the millennium, few young stars captured the world's attention like Lindsay Lohan. Born in 1986 in New York City, Lindsay began modeling as a child and quickly moved into acting, appearing in commercials before landing her breakthrough role in The Parent Trap in 1998. With her natural charm, striking red hair, and undeniable screen presence, she became Hollywood's favorite new face. The film was a commercial and critical success, and it introduced a young actress who seemed destined for greatness. By the early 2000s, Lindsay was the undisputed teen queen of Hollywood. Her roles in Freaky Friday and Mean Girls not only cemented her as a box office draw, but also made her a cultural icon. Mean Girls, in particular, became a generational phenomenon, with Lindsay at the center of a film that defined teenage life for millions. She was not just an actress, she was a brand, appearing on magazine covers, television shows, and red carpets, embodying the promise of a new kind of young Hollywood star. Yet, beneath the glittering rise, the pressures of fame began to weigh heavily on her. Lindsay was barely out of her teens when she became a household name, thrust into a world of constant attention and endless expectations. Hollywood was hungry for the next young star to push into superstardom, and Lindsay seemed to fit the bill perfectly. But the industry's appetite is rarely satisfied, and the demands placed on her soon became overwhelming. Her personal life became just as public as her career. The media obsessively covered her friendships, relationships, and family drama. Paparazzi followed her every move, often portraying her less as a rising star and more as a target for gossip. By the mid-2000s, Lindsay was no longer just Hollywood's sweetheart, she was a tabloid fixture, her every mistake magnified, her every misstep captured by cameras. The entertainment world of that era thrived on spectacle. With the rise of gossip blogs, tabloid television, and the early explosion of social media, stars like Lindsay had no place to hide. Every night out became a headline. Every stumble outside a club became breaking news. She was celebrated for her talent, but increasingly defined by her notoriety. Adding to the pressure was Lindsay's complicated family background. Her parents' turbulent relationship and her father's legal troubles often made headlines of their own, creating a cycle of chaos that mirrored Lindsay's own struggles. Instead of stability, she grew up surrounded by conflict, a reality that made navigating fame even more difficult. At the height of her fame, Lindsay represented the best and worst of Hollywood's obsession with youth and beauty. She was talented, charismatic, and adored, yet she was also fragile, unprepared for the relentless spotlight. The stage was set for one of the most infamous downfalls in modern Hollywood, a fall that would shock fans, devastate her career, and turn her into a living example of the dangers of fame too young and too fast.
Lindsay Lohan's rise was swift, dazzling, and impossible to ignore. After the success of The Parent Trap, she became Hollywood's golden child, cast in back-to-back hits like Freaky Friday and Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen. By the time Mean Girls exploded into theaters in 2004, Lindsay had become a superstar. Her face was on billboards, her interviews filled glossy magazines, and her talent promised a career that could rival the greats. At just 18, she was positioned not only as a teen idol, but as the future of Hollywood itself. Yet behind the glowing headlines, warning signs began to emerge. Lindsay was suddenly thrust into an adult world of parties, clubs, and ceaseless paparazzi attention. Every move she made was documented, every mistake exaggerated. What for others might have been youthful rebellion quickly became scandalous news. Late-night outings, questionable friendships, and rumors of substance abuse began to overshadow her performances. The initial incident that signaled the unraveling came in 2005, when her rapid weight loss and hospital visits raised concerns about her health. The tabloids feasted on every photograph, every whispered rumor. Soon after, her reputation as a professional actress began to erode. Reports of lateness on set, conflicts with directors, and unfinished projects began to circulate. The once promising actress was being rebranded by the media as unreliable and troubled. As the years went on, the scandals escalated. Arrests for driving under the influence, possession charges, and endless stints in rehab became part of Lindsay's public identity. Courtroom appearances were splashed across every entertainment outlet, reducing her to a cautionary headline rather than a serious actress. Each attempt at a comeback was quickly derailed by another incident, another controversy. Her name became synonymous with chaos. The climax of her fall came in the late 2000s, when her career was virtually non-existent. Major studios that once fought to cast her now refused to insure her for film projects. Directors spoke openly about the difficulties of working with her. She was no longer Hollywood's golden girl, but the poster child for wasted potential. The same media that once built her up now reveled in tearing her down, publishing mugshots and footage of her stumbling outside clubs as though her personal destruction was entertainment. For Lindsay, the consequences were devastating. Her dreams of a long and respected acting career seemed shattered. Attempts at music, fashion, and independent films were overshadowed by her reputation. Even when she showed genuine talent, the world seemed unwilling to forget the scandals. Her fall was not a single event, but a relentless spiral fueled by fame, addiction, family turmoil, and the unforgiving eye of the public. By the end of the decade, Lindsay Lohan was no longer remembered for her iconic roles, but for her spectacular collapse. What began as a fairy tale Hollywood story had transformed into one of the most infamous cautionary tales in entertainment history. A rise and fall so dramatic it would be studied and remembered for years to come.
Behind the flashing lights of Hollywood premieres and the laughter of teen comedies, Lindsay Lohan was living a darker reality than anyone imagined. Her downfall was not simply the result of youthful recklessness, it was the product of deep personal wounds, toxic environments, and an industry that valued profit over protection. One of the darkest truths of Lindsay's story lies in her family life. Her parents' bitter divorce and public fights created a storm of instability. Her father, Michael Lohan, faced repeated legal troubles, while her mother, Dina, often appeared more like a party companion than a parental anchor. The lack of a strong support system left Lindsay vulnerable, unprotected, and constantly seeking validation in all the wrong places. Fame only amplified these cracks. As her stardom grew, so did the demands. Lindsay was pushed to deliver hit after hit with grueling schedules and no time to breathe. The pressure to maintain her image, perfect body, flawless smile, endless charm, drove her toward dangerous coping mechanisms. Friends turned into enablers, Hollywood insiders fed her vices, and the tabloids documented every misstep. Addiction, once whispered about, became undeniable. Cocaine, alcohol, and prescription drugs became part of her daily escape. The consequences were brutal. Arrests in 2007 and 2010 for driving under the influence and drug possession exposed the truth that Hollywood had tried to hide. Court-ordered rehab stints followed, but instead of recovery, Lindsay found herself in a revolving door of treatment centers. Each attempt at healing was consumed by the glare of the media, leaving her no space to recover privately. The world saw her struggles as entertainment, her mugshots plastered across magazines like trophies of her decline. Perhaps the most haunting truth is how the industry abandoned her. Directors and producers who once praised her talent distanced themselves. Studios refused to insure her, making her unemployable. Her attempts at comeback projects, whether through music, indie films, or fashion, were overshadowed by her reputation as troubled Lindsay. In interviews, she spoke of feeling betrayed, of being left behind by the very system that once celebrated her. The girl who had carried movies with charm and wit was now reduced to a punchline. Even darker were the emotional scars. Lindsay openly admitted to battling depression, anxiety, and feelings of worthlessness. She confessed that fame had stolen her childhood, leaving her without the chance to grow up normally. The pressure to be perfect, combined with public humiliation, created a cycle of self-destruction she struggled to break. The public's reaction was both cruel and fascinated. Every stumble outside a nightclub was front-page news. Late-night hosts turned her tragedy into comedy routines. Fans who once adored her now mocked her downfall. Yet beneath the chaos was a woman crying out for help, suffocated by fame and forgotten by an industry that thrives on sensational collapse. Lindsay Lohan's darkest truth is not just that she fell, it's that her fall was fueled by a system designed to consume her. Her tragedy is not solely her own, but a reflection of how Hollywood chews up its brightest stars and spits them out when they're no longer profitable. At Hidden Fame, we see Lindsay Lohan's story not only as a tale of personal downfall, but as a mirror of the entertainment industry's darkest tendencies. She was celebrated as Hollywood's teen queen, adored by millions, and yet when the cracks began to show, the same system that built her abandoned her. Lindsay's struggles were turned into headlines, her pain consumed as public spectacle, and her humanity reduced to clickbait. Her achievements deserve recognition. Lindsay was a remarkably gifted actress with a natural charisma that made her unforgettable on screen. Films like Mean Girls and The Parent Trap remain cultural touchstones, proving that her talent was never in question. She had the ability to carry a movie, to make audiences laugh, cry, and remember her long after the credits rolled. In another world, with more protection and less pressure, she could have enjoyed a career spanning decades. But Lindsay's story also highlights the cruel dynamics of fame. Hollywood has a history of exploiting young stars, pushing them into adult roles before they are ready and punishing them when they falter. Instead of receiving help, Lindsay was vilified. Instead of being guided, she was mocked. It's important to ask whether her downfall was entirely her own doing or whether the industry and the public share in the blame. As a channel, our perspective is that Lindsay Lohan is not just a cautionary tale of reckless choices, she is also a victim of an unforgiving system, a young woman whose vulnerabilities were magnified by the spotlight. Her story forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that we, as an audience, play a role in consuming and perpetuating the tragedies of the very stars we claim to love. What do you think? Was Lindsay Lohan the architect of her own collapse, or was she sacrificed to feed an industry and culture addicted to scandal? Share your thoughts, your memories of her iconic roles, and your perspective on how Hollywood treats its brightest talents.
Lindsay Lohan's story lingers as one of Hollywood's most haunting echoes. She was once the embodiment of promise, a young actress whose talent seemed limitless and whose smile could light up the screen. For an entire generation, her roles were more than entertainment. They were memories, moments of growing up, and symbols of a carefree era. But those same memories are now colored by the knowledge of what followed. The arrests, the mugshots, the scandals, and the chaos left behind a narrative that overshadowed her brilliance. Still, when audiences revisit Mean Girls or The Parent Trap, they see not only the tragedy that came later, but the spark of a star who defined their youth. Some stories were never meant to be known. But now you know. You know the truth of how Hollywood's darling became its cautionary tale. And in knowing, you carry a piece of Lindsay's legacy, not just the scandals that consumed her, but the joy she gave before the storm. Her legacy is complicated. She is both the girl who made us laugh and the woman who made us reflect on the price of fame. Lindsay Lohan may never fully escape the shadows of her past, but her name will always remain etched in pop culture history, a reminder of both the power and the peril of stardom. Like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories hidden behind the fame.